Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. And over the last 7 or so years, I feel like remakes have been some of the most exciting games. Now, to be fair, I don't know if that's necessarily a great sign for the rest of the industry and their creativity. I'll let you be the judge of all of that, but there are two specific remakes that have had a lot of questions about their future. Well, today we got some updates for those two games, which one I'd say is really good news, while the other, we'll talk about it. Now, we'll also talk about a very exciting update for the biggest game of the year, being Palworld. You Xbox and PC players out there can once again rejoice because they teased a huge update that has the potential to not only bring players back, but if done right, this could help it for years and years to come. Before we get started, though, do make sure to hit that nice, shiny subscribe button. You might have to imagine the shiny part, but it's there, and really, it's just a great way for you to stay up to date with all of the daily gaming news. I am here every Monday through Friday. With that said, though, let's just go and jump right into things, starting off with a brand new Prince of Persia game. We actually talked about this a week or so back because its details did leak a little early, and they absolutely were true. It's now official. Ubisoft just announced the Rogue of Prince of Persia, and as you can see on screen, its art style is quite unique. I feel like some people will really like it, while others might not. But what I will say is that I do like what I'm seeing in terms of its gameplay. There's already some early previews up. I do recommend checking them out, and it looks pretty good. There's a lot of verticality, you can run across walls, and just the overall premise, I think, does fit very well into the Prince of Persia timeline. This being a roguelike, you don't simply die and restart, but rather you go back in time and you just try it all again. And that does fit this series very well. Now, this is being developed by Evil Empire, which previously worked on Dead Cells, and Dead Cells is widely believed to be one of the better independent games out there. So hopefully that will translate over to the Rogue of Prince of Persia. But if anything, you Prince of Persia fans out there are eating very, very well right now. Of course, The Lost Crown released earlier this year. I thought that was absolutely excellent. And if you're interested in the Rogue of Prince of Persia, you're not going to have to wait too long to try it out for yourself because it is set to release in early access next month on May 14th. So that's two Prince of Persia games in a span of 4 months. In the meantime, though, just go ahead and check out those early previews. Now, interestingly, that wasn't the only news for Prince of Persia today, because the same person who leaked information for the Rogue of Prince of Persia also just leaked information for the Sands of Time remake. Yes, this is coming from the ever-reliable Tom Henderson over on Insider Gaming, and check out what he said. Forget everything that you've heard from the reveal trailer, as the remake has been remade from scratch. Prince of Persia Sands of Time Remake's overhaul includes a more realistic approach, said one source. Everything has been built from the ground up, which includes a complete graphical overhaul, new animations and mechanics for combat and parkour, and much more. Starting from scratch has meant that the game has been rewritten, recaptured in mocap, and more. Okay, so this is actually a really interesting turn of events, because I think what this tells us is that Ubisoft is, yes, taking this remake very serious, which is exactly what you want to hear. They could have easily ignored the backlash to the initial trailer and just launched it as it was, but they didn't. They told fans that they heard them loud and clear, and because of that, they delayed it, and they gave it to a completely different studio, Ubisoft Montreal. That's a very talented studio, and, pretty much since then, fans have constantly asked, where's this remake? Is it still in development? Why is it taking so long? And this report here pretty much answers all of those questions. They're completely redoing everything, and I think the description that it will sport a more realistic art style kind of speaks to it being a bigger budget type of game. I think that original remake that we saw was probably more in lines with a AA style of game, but this newfound direction makes it sound like it's much bigger in scope now, and I really think this game deserves it. It's really an all-time classic for a reason, and as I said at the top of the video, some of the best and most exciting games these past few years have been remakes. So hopefully that continues on with the Sands of Time remake as well. The only thing is just don't expect this game to release anytime soon. Still sounds like it will be years away. Now, what I will say, though, is that Tom Henderson did note that several sources have suggested that the company could give a more prominent update on the project soon, but what that looks like and when it will be is unclear. So, this is not a for sure gone confirmation, but if they do show us sometime soon, the place I'd pay attention to is that upcoming Ubisoft Forward that airs on June 10th. There's also rumors that the Splinter Cell remake will be there as well. So if they show both, this really could be one of the better Ubisoft Forwards to date. Okay, so before we get into our next remake, because I guess today was just the day for remakes, I don't know. But let's just go ahead and shift gears here for a moment because we got a pretty sizable update for Palworld. It was just a week or so back when certain outlets were reporting on its daily player count and how a large portion of players are no longer playing it. Now, like I said then, that's really not a concern at all. It's already reached 25 million players, which is, absolutely incredible, and fans clearly enjoyed their time with it. Its Steam user reviews confirms that. It still to this day has a 93% approval rate, which is very impressive for a game that's reached as many people as it has. And you have to remember that this is still an early access title, so the future of Palworld is really just whatever Pocket Pair wants it to be. If they want this game to last for years and years, they have more than enough money to support this game now. And today, they confirmed that's exactly what they're doing. They just teased a PvP battle arena mode where you'll try to prove you're the best there ever was. Your true test will be to catch pals, and your calls will be to train them all. Then in PvP, you'll battle alongside your pals to teach them the power that's inside. Now, okay, this might all sound familiar on paper, but in action, it's completely different. You will legitimately fight alongside your pals, and that will be a very unique element with its gun-based combat, and you might even say that your pals will teach you just as much as you teach them. Truthfully, I think you'll have to be very strategic in how you have your pals set up to protect you. So I think this will be very different than the competition. And like I said, if they somehow pull this off, I think this will be a significant inclusion. If they can properly put together a meaningful PvP mode, this is an extra layer that they could build on for years and years to come. Now, I'm not going to name any specific names here, but if you compare this to another popular monster taming franchise that, it's often compared to, you'll know that PvP can be very big. There are a lot of people out there that play those games for years and years for that very specific reason. And that element, while again will be very different in Palworld, it is now coming and could be a major shakeup for this game. So we'll see how all this shapes up when it releases later this year, sometime in 2024. Now, back onto those remakes again. We touched up on this yesterday, but for you Dead Space fans out there, it's been a very up and down 24 hours. As we learned yesterday, EA decided to put EA Motive on the Battlefield universe, and that is cause for concern because this does take resources away from a possible Dead Space 2 remake. EA Motive, of course, is already working on Iron Man, and with the inclusion of Battlefield, it's currently unknown if they have enough resources for Dead Space 2. Well, today we got an update for that, but in a very weird kind of way. Basically, this all started off with the often leaky Jeff Grubb. He claimed that EA Motive was working on a Dead Space 2 concept, but it was shelved due to lackluster sales. And this just kind of blew up online from there. Dead Space is probably one of the most beloved horror franchises out there, and the remake last year was greeted with widespread positive reception, which ultimately I agree with. I think it's an excellent game, and for me, it's really one of my favorite horror experiences ever made. So if this is actually indeed true, this is terrible news. But this is also where the story gets a little bit more strange because in a rare move, EA actually responded. You don't really see this happen often in the game industry, but they posted a response to IGN, and we can just read it here. EA has denied reports that Dead Space 2 Remake was in development before being canceled, with a spokesperson telling IGN, "We don't normally comment on rumors, but there is no validity to this story." And okay, so at first glance, you might think that this is a good sign. Maybe there's hope for a Dead Space 2 remake in development after all. But, as Jeff Grubb pointed out in his own response, he said, "I give you my permission to believe EA if you want, but whenever a company says, quote unquote, that isn't true, but they don't specify which part of the story they are talking about, well, yeah, Dead Space 2 was definitely being planned. It had a code name, and they aren't making it now. In fact, in IGN's article, they did actually say, quote-unquote, IGN understands that EA Motive never considered a Dead Space 2 remake. So, there it is. I mean, you can believe whatever you want between this whole back and forth between Jeff Grubb and EA, but I think that line from IGN really tells you everything that you need to know. Whether a Dead Space 2 remake concept was a thing or not, currently, as of today, Dead Space 2 Remake is not in development, and that's the important takeaway here. So as a Dead Space fan myself, this, I'd say, is definitely disheartening. Now, hopefully they'll pick it up eventually, but that's where, again, we go back to the Battlefield news because it might be a while. It does sound like EA Motive will be plenty busy with Iron Man and Battlefield. That was kind of the concern in the first place, and ultimately, I feel like this does kind of confirm that to a degree. I think this also kind of highlights another aspect of the game industry, though. I know there's a lot of people that get very excited about all of these superhero and Disney games, but because Disney is licensing out so much content across the industry, that also means that we will see less franchises that originated or will originate from gaming. To a degree, you can actually make a case that this takes away from that creativity in the game industry. So it's really just kind of up to each individual and which direction you prefer. But let me know what you all think about all of this. Are you upset about the news, or are you just simply excited about the next Battlefield game and Iron Man? Now, one last thing before we go, though. Shift Up just announced that Stellar Blade has officially gone gold, which means that its release date is pretty set in stone by this point. You don't have to worry about some sudden delay or anything like that. And after its demo, yeah, it's a little bit different than what some people were expecting. It has this Souls-like element to it, which was a little bit of a surprise, but its reception overall has been very strong. So this is great news, and I'm personally very excited to jump in myself when it releases later this month on April 26th. Go ahead and mark your calendars. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. Do make sure to subscribe because I'll be back with another news dose tomorrow, but until then, peace out.